All right, folks, I'm gonna give you guys 5 baits that you can use during the cold front times of the year. When you're going into, in my area of the country, that cold front, when we start getting a lot of cold fronts, is gonna be in the fall time. They can be anywhere from October to November. There's gonna be a series of weather events that typically follow that. This can go for a cold front in the winter time. You can have cold fronts even during the winter periods too. But in my opinion, there's certain things that happen during cold front times of the year, and I want to give you some baits, just a starting point that you can use to help you catch fish during these weather phenomena that we have happen. Basically, the cold front is what triggers fall fishing anyway, so this is just going to be a part of your fishing. A lot of times, especially as bass anglers, I'm not even going to lie, I'm that guy. You tend to not want to go. You're taught to not want to fish post-frontal conditions. Oh, it's bluebird and it's post-frontal, you kind of taught to not fish. I can tell you right now, that's probably some of the best times of the year to fish, especially early and late fall. I know that's relative to where you live in the country. For you guys up north, that period is going to happen a lot earlier. For you guys down south, it happens much further into the year. So there's going to be 5 baits that you can use. Let's talk about what happens cold front of the year. Typically, if you have a cold front, the wintertime is going to be rain, it's going to be wind, it's going to be cold weather. It's typically what you're going to have. It's very rarely that you have days like what we have today and the weather shifts. Usually there's warm weather, 70, 80 degree weather, wind starts, then rain, followed by cooler days. That's usually the stages that you have in the fall. Right now, we're actually in one of those trends right now. We've had a few storms about a week ago, turned off cold, turned off very windy, and now it's bluebird, slick, and calm, and it's a lot cooler in the mornings, and it's getting into the 60s in the middle of the day. Hey, real quick, this year I'm actually sponsoring 2 fishermen. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to pay the entry fees, tournament entry fees, provide gear and tournament support for 2 anglers to fish the BFLs. Here's how you win that. You gotta be a part of my straight up fishing community, my straight up fishing school, where I teach people how to be a better fisherman. Not only do you learn fishing lessons from me, but sometimes we bring in other professionals to talk about specific techniques, baits, and even talk about new gear that's hitting the market before most people even know about it. So join the community, check the description box for more details about how you can be a sponsored angler. First of all, let's talk about it. Most of the time on the front side of a cold front is going to be wind. It's going to be wind and clouds. So let's talk about some baits that are really good to use in wind and cloud situation. Number one, I had it in my hand since I started talking because it's one of my favorite ones. If you got a clear body of water and it's windy in the fall, throw a jerkbait. Period. Just put the boat on the bank, throw it a point, throw it a dock, throw it on a flat bank, a steep bank. Put a jerkbait in your hand and throw it. I guarantee you, if you've got wind, you've got fall time of the year, plus a front, the fish they're going to be feeding on shad. They're going to be feeding up. We'll talk about this later as you get into the wintertime. Typically fish are down towards the bottom, feeding down. But most of the time, in my experience, fish are feeding up. They're looking up. They're high in the water column, they're feeding on shad and bait and everything that's in the top part of the water spectrum. A jerkbait is going to be a great bait to throw. Why is a jerkbait good to throw pre-frontal or frontal and frontal conditions? Number one, we just talked about it, it's going to be windy. When it's windy, you need something that you can actually present to the fish. So now a floating worm or a Cinco or a stick bait is not going to be a good bait to throw because you have zero control of what that bait does. With a jerkbait in the wind, I have pretty much complete control over where the bait is, how I can throw it, where I can present it, the speed of the bait, how far it gets down in the water column, and how it reaches what I'm trying to target. I've got complete control over it. That's why a jerkbait is a good bait, and the obvious fact that they're feeding on shad that time of the year. Throw a jerkbait. That's going to be a really good one. My second one is the almighty spinnerbait. Spinnerbait is really good in the fall. I'm going to echo the same thing over and over and over. Why do you think they like a spinnerbait? Well, what are they eating? What are bass eating in the fall time? They're eating shad. The blades on a spinnerbait give off the flash, and I don't know why, this bait has not stopped working since it came out. I don't know when that was, 60s or 70s I think it came out. The spinnerbait just catches them. I have two out here that I wanted to show you that I like to use, and this is going to get into those weather conditions. You can see they're two different spinnerbaits, the same spinnerbait dressed out two different ways. Why do you think I have them dressed out two different ways? You can see one has a willow leaf, one has a silicone skirt, one has a rubber skirt, one has a orange blade. Why do you think I got two different types here? Very simple. As we just mentioned, when you have a front, a lot of times you have rain associated with that. And a lot of times it's a lot of rain. This is our rainy period of the year. Typically early fall, it's going to be dry. As soon as we get around Thanksgiving to December, Christmas, it may start raining and not stop until May or June. We get our most bulk of our rainfall in this 4 to 6 month window. When you get a lot of rain, you're going to have muddy conditions. Now, depending on how far you're in, how many fronts you've had during the beginning of the year, probably going to depend. That's probably going to determine how muddy or how clear your bodies of water are. So if you're early in the season, water probably still clear. You probably had your first cold front of the year. Even though you've got some rain and some clouds, your water's still clear, so willow leaf spinnerbait's just going to work better for you. I like to throw the willow leaf spinnerbait clearer or just stain water, not muddy, just stain water or clear water. I'll use this guy in just a shad pattern, nothing special, nothing crazy. Shad pattern. You can see this one is more of a pearl with a chartreuse bottom to it. I've got one silver and one gold blade. It's a 3/4 ounce. I like to throw a half and a 3/4. I throw a half when I'm fishing shallow, and I throw a 3/4 when I need to get it a little bit deeper. You can throw a spinnerbait in the wind. We just mentioned during a cold front, you're going to have adverse weather conditions, rain, cloud, wind. I can throw this 3/4 very well in the wind, and I can put it where I need to put it. I can put it around laydowns. I can put it around docks. I can put it wherever I need to put it in those adverse conditions. That's why it's a good bait. Now, the other one I have dressed out is a good bit different. Totally different blade combination, different blade colors. It's a different size head, a different style skirt. I'll even use a different style trailer. This one is probably going to be one that you're going to use on cold fronts deeper into the season. Why would that be? Very simple. As you get into December, January, even February, when you get those cold fronts, pre-front, during the front, or even post-front, you've had more of them. So your watercolor is going to be much more stained to even muddy as you get into the season. So even though I'm still going to use a spinnerbait, the spinnerbait is going to look a little different. The Colorado or Indiana, as this one has on it, is going to throw more water, going to displace more water. If you don't know it already, Colorado blades, Indiana blades have a more aggressive thump. They displace more water, so that's why we use them in more stain water. The willow leaf blade, just as it shapes, look, it's more thin, it's more subtle, doesn't have near the kick and the thump and the water displacement. That's why we use it in clear water. This one's much more aggressive. If you throw the two different crankbaits, spinnerbaits, you can feel it. It's a very noticeable difference. I also went with a rubber skirt. A rubber skirt has way more vibration in the water, so it displaces more water and lets the fish find my bait a lot easier. So that's why I'm going to use this bait over a silicone skirt. You don't have to have it. You can get away with the silicone skirt, but I like the rubber skirt in muddy water conditions. It's also a 1/2 ounce. A 1/2 ounce is just, I'm probably going to be fishing in much shallower water if the water is muddy. So a 1/2 ounce is just going to be a better size to fish around laydowns, wood. That's going to be a little bit shallower. Two more baits that you want to use in cold front situations. I don't actually have one rigged up here. Very simple. I want to say you probably, if you're within the site, you probably know what it is, but it is a drop shot. I really like a drop shot. There's probably not going to be a season where I don't mention a drop shot, but a drop shot during the cold front, cold times of the year is perfect. Reason being, Traditionally, we thought of a drop shot as a bait that you use in deep, clear water to fish 20, 30, 40 feet deep, 50 feet deep. Well, over time, we've understood that a drop shot is a really good bait to use in a bunch of different situations, whether it be 2 foot to 50 foot. It works. In particular, the context that I want to use here talking about a drop shot is going to be fishing it a little bit deeper. For you guys that fish for smallmouth, spotted bass, even some largemouth fisheries where the bait, where you're fishing a little bit deeper, a little bit clearer water, the drop shot is king. I like to use a smaller profile minnow style bait during a cold front. This one right here is a Streaks 375. This is just a shad pattern color here. I like to use this one a lot for this time of the year. When I get those post-frontal conditions, even during the front, you know they're going to be feeding on shad. You probably need to go with a finesse presentation. You can see a day like today, it's not much wind, it's very clear, high blue skies. You can't go down there with something that's big and bulky and moving around real fast. You need something like this. So, drop shot, 3/16 ounce weight. I usually nose hook this bait with just like a #2 drop shot hook and drop that on schools of bait. I'll drop it around deep brush. That's going to be my setup for that. And then lastly is going to be crankbaits. Crankbaits are also, I'll throw a lipless. I'll also throw 13 Fishing makes a crankbait called a gordita. This is also a good crankbait to use pre-front, frontal, and even after the front. I like these baits. In particular, during a cold front, this can be, the thing about the crankbaits, it can be great pre-front, but when you're getting all those wind and cloud, if you got rocks, if you got laydowns, if you've got even like just sand drops where it's muddy, and then it turns to sand and it kind of drops off. I call it sand drops even if it's mud or anything like that. Crankbaits work really good. Bass relate to mud flats this time of year, any type of flat during a frontal situation, especially if you've got a flat that's directly adjacent to deeper water. Primo, that's what you want to be looking for. Any kind, that can be the back of a creek, that can be an extremely flat pocket, but those times of the year, a lipless crankbait and or any type of shallow diving crankbait. When I say shallow diving crankbait, I'm talking about a bait that's going to dive 8 foot and shallower. Anything in that spectrum, 8 foot and shallower is going to be a bait you want to use. I've got one in here, the Cliff Banger. That's also a good one. This one gets about 8 to 10 foot, just depending on how long the cast is and what type of line you're throwing. This is a good one too. If you got a little bit deeper water. Forest colors. Let's talk about the colors. Very simple. Black chartreuse obviously is going to be a good color. Any of the shad patterns, by shad patterns, that can be translucent belly, dark back. It can be blue, black back. It can be anything that's more natural shad, silver, chromes. All those colors are going to be good colors to use this time of the year. Don't overthink it. White, black, black chartreuse. You can even start to bring in your reds. We've coined red crankbaits and all of that as wintertime cold water stuff. Listen, they work in the winter and cold time because that's when we throw them. Start throwing them now. When that water temperature is in the low 70s, 60s, start throwing your red crankbaits. Throw your black and chartreuses. It's not so much about that this time of the year. It's about profile and making sure you get the bait to the fish. You're presenting the bait to the fish in the right manner. So obviously, this lake we're on today is very flat. Not a lot of contour. If I go out there with this bait that dives about 8 foot and all the banks that I'm fishing, where all the bait's going to be, it's probably going to be anywhere from 2 to 4 foot. This Cliff Banger is not going to be a good option because it's just going to bury itself. It's going to auger itself down in the mud everywhere I go. However, if I were to take this lipless that I can throw it out and as soon as it hits the water, start reeling it, it works really good. It's going 1 to 4 foot. This is your bait. I can get it down 6, 7, 8 foot, but 1 to 4 foot, it really shines. So that's how I determine what type and what kind of crankbait I'm going to throw. Is just simply how can I present it the best wherever I'm fishing. So I think that's the 5, isn't it? They got the crankbait, the jerkbait, the spinnerbait, the drop shot. Those are the 5 baits that you guys can use to help you catch fish this time of the year during those Pre-frontal, post-frontal, and the frontal conditions. Great times to get out and catch them. When that weather is changing, anytime you have weather changing, fish are on the move, they're aggressive, and they're gonna bite. Get out there and try to catch them. If you found this clip from Straight Up Fishing School helpful for you at all, I'd love to have you in the group of anglers that we have within our school. This is a great place for you guys to learn the best gear, the best places, the best techniques to help you catch more fish. Fishing actually isn't as hard as you may think it is. You just got to understand a few fundamental principles to help you catch more fish. Check the link in the description box of this video or the comment section. Click on it, join the group. Fishing is going to be a lot more fun when you understand the very simple truths to help you catch more fish.